Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me today for another archivist video, Antiquities of the West, as you can tell by the thumbnail. Um, this is one I've had for a long time and sorting my way through some of my older material. Just felt like it was a good time to present this one to everybody. Kind of correlates with um, m- my recent anomalous American material along the Mississippi Valley, but ties in a lot of kind of speculative ideas that I throw around on this channel regularly. Um, but yeah, time is precious. Again, thanks for being here. It's been a crazy, crazy week. Big wedding, tons of family in town, tons of family still staying with me. Haven't really been able to work, record, or anything. So this is, yeah, again, should correlate and overlap with a lot of other material I presented. But we're going to work our way through this one. Again, this is 1818, the Alexandria Gazette. One of my favorite newspapers. I've probably read, I don't even know, hundreds of editions, thousands of pages of the Alexandria Gazette. Pre 1830. You've heard me in the past talk about blips in time and perhaps events being related to, maybe reset or but yeah, the period between 1760 and the 1840s is a very odd time, and there is a big gap in material, so to say. And it's weird. It's almost like pre 1820. No one's really discussing the mysteries of the realm or interesting things they're finding or what's in these mounds, who built these. No one's even really speculating on this. It's almost as if something happened in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and they're kind of re-educating the populace and rediscovering things that it's almost as if in the late 1700s, these things were already known and understood. And um, perhaps these kind of questions were already answered, or there weren't even questions. It was already an established fact, so to say. Just wanted to throw that out there before I get into this material here. But this is a special one. Um, ideas of ruins and antiquities and stuff like that. The closer to the 1700s you get, the harder they are to find. They are very rare. And this is one of my oldest ones where they're openly discussing some of these subjects that we talk about today. So for it to be 205 plus years old, it's pretty crazy. These are subjects and topics that are being thought of and pondered, just as this gentleman who wrote this article, Mr. Printer, he's pondering the same things that I ponder today, 200 plus years ago. And the language he uses and the way things are correlated, it's just rereading this. I had to make this video because there's just so much amazing material in this, and the way you can kind of picture the things he's thinking. Just, yeah, you'll see. So I'll shut up and we'll just get into the article here again. Tuesday, May 12th, 1818, Alexandria Gazette. Antiquities of the West, Mr. Printer. We're starting over here. While so much has been written on the soil, climate, and production of the Western country, it is surprising that so little has been said of its antiquities. Although I must confess that the depth of human research is incompetent to the task of producing even probable conjecture on this occult subject. Yet it is one of the principles of the philosophic mind to search into mysteries which it is unable to investigate to a demonstration. It may not be known to a number of your readers that from the Allegheny West to Rocky Mountains, you can scarcely travel a day without being in the neighborhood of some of these monuments of antiquity. Throughout the states of Ohio, Indiana, and the territories of Illinois and Missouri, you everywhere meet with the ruins of old fortifications, which appear to have been executed with too much art to be the work of the aborigines of the country. Considering the savage state in which we found them, unless we consider that they have degenerated from a state of civilization of which they now do not shew the smallest marks. Besides these, the country abounds in many places with artificial mounds thrown up in a pyramidal form to considerable height. And we've talked about these pyramids, some destroyed, some still there, these mounds that are not just earthen pyramids, but some of them stone pyramids, and that some of them extend considerable distance into the soil, 60 or more feet. And as we've explored through my Anomalous America, Missouri episodes, crossing the bridge into Illinois, Cahokia, Mound City, we've shown that these mounds, these pyramids, are interconnected with subterranean highways. And it's important to keep that in mind as we continue on here, as these are more conspicuous in the vicinity of the fortifications than elsewhere. We've shown that too, that these mounds were often constructed within these fortifications, and that through several other articles, they've gone as far as to conjecture that many of the burials seem to be of a more recent date, built on top of previous constructions. And oddly enough, we've found these same ideas pondered in Easter Island and some of the islands across the Pacific, where they find similar earthen mound burials on top of, quote, cyclopean, more ancient constructions. So keep that in mind also as we move through that I've read articles previous that they've pondered these forts to be much older than these mounds, and that the mounds perhaps came secondary to these fortifications. Sorry, where was I? I at first thought that they might have been for the purpose of watchtowers, and that the whole was no more modern than generally conjectured to be. I do not think it improbable that the Spaniards, after first settling in Mexico, might have sent colonies to these parts, which have since been cut off, and for their safety while here thought it necessary thus to fortify themselves. But more mature reflection induced me to change this opinion. We've again read material stating the same thing over and over, that these constructions seem to be much older. We're talking 1000, 2000 BC era time frame. Although the construction of their breastwork appeared to be equal to any modern improvement in the art, yet the mounds which I at first took for watchtowers, on a closer inspection I found must have been intended for quite different purpose. My curiosity permitted me to dig several of these up, and I found them to be repositories of the dead. They were full of human bones and charcoal, with alternate layers of earth from bottom to top. In these I found pieces of pottery and various trinkets cut out of stone, for which I could conjecture no use. Now, another thing to remember is that some of the symbolism on these trinkets were Taoist, Buddhist, you find swastikas, crosses. So interesting, these trinkets. I could not be surprised at the state of the preservation in which I found them. However, they soon moldered to dust after coming in contact with the air. The charcoal, from its anti putrescent quality, might have contributed to the preservation while in the mounds. Therefore, we may suppose this race of people be somewhat acquainted with practical chemistry, the land of Kemet, of which the modern savages appear quite destitute, as this mode of burial is quite different from either that of the Indians or Europeans. It is reasonable to suppose them a different race of people now extinct. As in this part of the country in which I reside, I cannot procure books from which to make references or draw comparisons between this mode of burial and that of the Mexicans or of the nations in the east of Asia. I will leave it to those who have better opportunities to decide what similarity there may be between them and whether some of the nations may not be descendants of others. From the attire found round the corpse, which were dug up in the saltpeter and copperas caves in Tennessee, we may reasonably suppose them to be much farther advanced in civilization than any of the Indians of this part of North America, and to have possessed the art of embalming in a higher perfection than the ancient Egyptians. In these, the features were perfectly discernible, and the countenance so fresh that as good a conjecture could be made as to their age, and etc., as could be done in a recent corpse. Now, funny that he mentions the caves in Tennessee. We showed not only in Tennessee, but the caves in Kentucky. They're finding hundreds, if not thousands, of Egyptian mummies. Egyptian mummies. And this man's going as far as to say that they possessed an art of embalming in a higher perfection. Interesting. The various petrifactions found in these parts belong more particularly to a province of the naturalist than to that of the antiquarian. But one uncommon appearance I cannot but mention, as it applies measurably to the present subject. Really important, I cover petrifactions in almost every one of my Anomalous America episodes, and it's really, really important fact to touch on because these petrifactions also denote a far more um, ancient history to the North American continent than we're led to believe. In the state of Tennessee, there is a hard, flat limestone rock of considerable extent over the whole surface of which are the prints of human feet together with that of turkeys and etc. This just correlates again with where? New Mexico, where we found the 7-foot tall red-headed mummy who was bound like many of these mummies in the Tennessee, Mississippi Valley area with knees to chest in a very, very, very high state of preservation. Charcoal, all of these things, an advanced level of an understanding of chemistry as well. With um, he was mummified with a turkey. The turkey was mummified as well. And yeah, important to keep in mind. This also correlates really well with the Anomalous America Nevada episode where we talk about the limestone rock where they found elephant, hyena, rhinoceros, giant man, 10 feet ish tall man, giant dog footprints, Carson, Nevada. I did a video on that. So if you want more of that type of stuff, make sure to check that out. Though this does not argue much in favor of the former civilization of the place, as the prints are all of the bare feet, but it argues what is more important to the natural philosopher. Now, I also did an episode where I talked about some of the shoes and sandals and the type of advanced construction with soles, the soling of the shoe, and some of the types of advanced weaving and threading of some of these sandals that they believed that didn't even wasn't even understood until the 16th, 17th century. So correlating again time frames being completely out of whack, and that simple as something as simple as a sandal could really show you quite a lot, reveal a lot of truth. Where was I? Though this does not, okay, as the prints are all of bare feet, right? But it argues what is more important to the natural philosopher, the changeable nature of matter. That is, hard rock was once a soft substance, very susceptible of impression, and that stone, particularly the carbonate of lime, grows and hardens like vegetable substances. However, modern chemistry has put this beyond a doubt that in some measure set bound to the imagination of conjecture philosophers, from the impression of the feet being made larger than those of present race of men. I fear it argues something else, not so gratifying to our pride. I mean, the degeneracy of the human family. Absolutely. Everything is getting smaller. This is these kind of transitional periods away from the age of the megafauna, the tropical climate that covered the entire northern hemisphere. And he's touching on that very lightly there and saying that this is the imagination of conjectural philosophers. Absolutely. That's what we all are. Those who are in the subject matter constantly looking for different information, pondering these kind of ideas, looking to the past for answers to our future. A volume might be written merely of descriptions of these ruined monuments of art, which puts conjecture at defiance to say by whom they were erected. Several very learned treatises have been written to prove that North American Indians are descendants of the Tartars who immigrated by the straits from the northeast of Asia to this country, and that the inhabitants of Mexico and Peru were originally from China. Um, I posted quite a lot about some of the very subterranean ancient monuments found in Mexico and how many of them are covered with, quote, Chinese hieroglyphics. Others, with as much learning and full as much probability, conceive that they are the descendants of the Phoenicians or the Carthaginians who passed the Pillars of Hercules and lost their way in the great Atlantic Ocean, where the trade winds drove them on the American shore. These, the story of the Welsh chief who was supposed by some to be the founder of these innumerable places the desert wilds of North America and 100 others written with fully as much erudition as all look very handsome on paper. They're talking about Prince Madoc. We covered him a little bit on this channel. We read and admire, then read again, and put away the book just about as wise as when we took them up. But among all their pryings into the past ages, I have not found one that supposed them to be an original people. Really important part coming up here. Again, I'm just gonna start over. But among all their pryings into the past ages, I have not found one that supposed them to be an original people, and that China, Tartary, etc., were peopled from this country. I do no see, but this carries fully as much reason on its side as anything that has yet been offered to the public. It certainly is fully as handsome a theory to suppose that the arts and science have always been making the regular circles around the globe as that they are sometimes retrograding. And if the Americans gave people and arts to China, this to Egypt, this to later to Europe, and Europe to America again, one complete circle comes within the compass of our fancy, and we might indulge ourselves by adding circle to circle ad infinitum. Did we not unfortunately run foul of the books of Moses? As for our own part, I had rather give up this my favorite theory, highly as I have been pleased with it, than contend against such high authority. Man, So, his opinion is that China and Tartary and Europe were peopled by the North American continent, and that they didn't come from Tartary and cross into America, that Tartary was peopled from America, and that the Mexicans, quote Mexicans, Peruvians, Carthaginians, Phoenicians migrated from here and peopled the Med, China, and Tartary, Russia, etc. And that he keeps this as his favorite theory and chooses not to contend against such high authority. I mean, even writing this article, think about what this guy's saying, amazing. If the original inhabitants of this country be descendants of the Tartars, and some writers think they can discern a similarity in their physiognomy, I say it the Tartars were their ancestors. Boom. They must have found a race of men here much more polished than themselves. For where do we read of even the modern Tartars constructing works of art any wise similar to these we find in the Western country? Unfortunately, no written accounts have been found among the inhabitants of this country. If we accept the scantily hieroglyphics of the Mexicans, by which we are enabled to trace their origin, it is true, they all have oral traditions, but these are so fabulous and contradictory that they do not deserve repeating, much less a serious refutation. I will merely observe that none of these speak of the race that is extinct, but that a civilized race of men once resided in this country. Our own senses must testify, and that this nation was large and extensive. The moldering ruins of their arts will bear evidence, for they extend some thousands of miles in circuit. But from whence did they spring? By whom were they destroyed? Or where have they gone? Here even conjecture fails us, and we can but sigh for the grandeur which has not even transmitted its name to after ages, and shed a tear over the moldering ashes of those whose history we now enjoy. Signed, Hermes. I love it. Silver Creek, St. Clair County, Illinois Territory, March 29th. Whew. Wow. Um, yeah, I could read this article twice or three times or four times. When I got it out and decided to reread it, it's one of those things where I have so many of these that I don't even remember reading them, and this was one of those where it was just like, just with all the things we've been covering in the Mississippi Valley, not only the Mississippi Valley, I think almost every episode of Anomalous America, this is like almost like a kind of bow tying it all together in a way, and that this is the kind of conjecture going on 200 plus years ago. Is exactly what I've been so fascinated and obsessed with in my journey through these newspapers and starting the Anomalous America series. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this. Looking really forward to your comments. Make sure to tune in tomorrow for Anomalous America, Indiana. And as always, love you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.